And we are live on video. Selegna Sol.
How you doing?
Welcome, David.
Thank you, thank you. Happy to be here. Honored and humbled to be on here, especially with some of your past guests. Really in good company.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you. I'm honored and humbled to have you as well. Yeah, I'm very impressed. I'll start by saying I'm very impressed by your photography. I even wandered my way over on, I believe, onto your photography Instagram. Do you have
Uh,
one?
yeah, I do. I do.
Yes.
Yeah, that's mostly my life. It started with photography, so started that early on, way before, well, kind of everything else. But
Beautiful.
street photography, as it's an easy way to describe it, but I, I, the photography I do is taking photos of people in public spaces.
Yes.
Straight on. So
So like portraits,
no, just the mundane, the everyday life.
candid.
Candid, yeah, it's mostly candid. I've been documenting downtown LA for like about 15 years. Just walking down there, walking the streets. It's the way I learned about the city and how it's changing and how the people are changing.
Beautiful. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really only glanced over it to be perfectly honest. But even if we just focus on your plant photography, your lighting and all of that, man, I love it. The setting and your greenhouse, it's all very, very beautiful. And we have that in common. I grew up shooting photos. I love photography.
Great.
Uh, and
Awesome.
so I'm actually excited to talk to you about that. Do you shoot analog?
I do. I do. I mean, that's how I started, and that's how I learned was all analog, developing my own film,
Hell yeah.
black and white and color. Learned how to print,
Nice.
but I was kind of like a very, very early adopter of the digital format. I think I
Mm,
had a Apple Quick Take
hmm
150 when it first came out, and that was like whatever a whole half megabyte of your photos, and that was like high res back then.
Right. Like
Uh,
8 megapixels was like the best digital SLR in the early days.
oh yeah, and it was like thousands and thousands of dollars. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do portraits, and um, one of the gigs that when I paid gigs was shooting live concerts as well for different magazines and different outlets. So I was doing that for a while as well, off and on. But as soon as you have more responsibilities of a family and a full-time job, it's hard to be out at till two
Yes.
o'clock at night, shooting gigs.
Yes. I had a similar experience. I used to get press passes with one of my buddies, and we would go to festivals. And my ex got tired of me being away for weeks at a time, having the time of my life, you know, at
For sure.
music festivals all the time.
Yeah,
So,
so I would shoot local cella.
yeah.
So they'd all the bands would have to stay here between the weeks. They'd all perform at the local clubs here, and so I'd spend my time bouncing around back and forth at night between different clubs, shooting different bands. So
Wonderful.
yeah, a lot of fun. It's
Yeah.
it's a young man sport. Yeah,
Sure. I mean, maybe maybe the festival life is for sure. I love medium format though, and like film. That's where my heart lies for sure. But I also shot a lot of digital too. I took some photography classes over the years. I attempted to go to the art institute, but I did not complete. But yeah, that's a passion of mine for sure, and it lingers in the back of my mind. It's not in the forefront. Apparently now podcasting is at the front, but
cool.
tell me, how long have you been collecting cactus?
Um, well, it all started with collecting succulents. My mom
Mm,
was a big collector of succulents, and she also grew Cymbidiums, which is a type of orchid.
mm-hmm.
Um, so she was always in the garden, cutting and collecting succulents, and I'd help her propagate them and make more plants for her garden. And my dad was, from the old world. He was all about gardening, but gardening for sustenance and food. And
Uh,
so he would grow vegetables for peanut bet. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a vegetable stew. It's a Filipino vegetable
okay,
stew, lima beans and bitter melon and
okay.
kind of gross things that I don't like, but that's what he would grow. That kind of those kind of vegetables.
Yeah, my mom never cooked that for us, but you're Pinoy, right? Both your parents?
I am. Yeah, my parents both immigrated to the United States for college. My mom went to uh, school in Chicago, and my dad went to Cal Poly Pomona over here in California. So
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, my mom moved from the Philippines when she was young. Um,
yeah, so I'm
cool.
first gen. First gen.
Yeah, I guess I'm half first gen. Um, awesome. So did you take any of that on the veggie gardening? Do you still do any of that?
I do. I do. I have a vegetable box that I grow vegetables, zucchini, tomato.
Righteous.
Um, get my tomatoes from Tomato Fest down at Descanso Gardens when it was open,
Mm,
and grow those. I have going on right now. I got mint and thyme and basil and um, yeah, yeah. Mostly it's like zucchini and tomatoes is what we like to grow because it's pretty successful here in Southern California.
okay, okay. Very cool. Um, sorry. I don't know why I'm so nervous. Uh, tell me more about that's an awesome bond that you're able to have that with your parents on both sides as well. Do you have any children?
I do. I do. I have a 17-year-old daughter who's a senior in high school, and I have another daughter who lives in Manhattan that just finished school.
Beautiful. And have you passed on any of those traits, the plant loving traits?
Not to my younger daughter, but my older daughter is really, she's my buddy. I mean, she's like mini me. She has the same interests. So when she's in town for summer vacations or spring vacations, we'll take our trips down to Vista and Fallbrook and visit all the growers down there and check out plants and geek out on plants. And we'll buy a few things and figure out what will survive in her New York apartment, and I'll ship them
Oh,
to her. So
very
yeah,
cool.
yeah, she
Wow.
enjoys it. She tries to grow a lot of house plants and things like that. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to share that with your kid. You know, to
Yeah.
have a certain bond. You know, she loves music as well, so we would go to festivals as well together and do the plant thing. And then my younger daughter is into her own world, you know, doing different things, but they're both very artistic,
Mm,
which was interesting because I didn't grow up in a very artistic household. You know, it was very Asian. You know, have to be
traditional.
traditional. You know, you had
Yeah.
three choices: doctor, lawyer, and engineer. Right? That's what you
Oh,
had.
not a nurse? You
Yeah.
weren't expected to become a nurse?
No, even though my mom was a nurse, my mom
Wow.
worked at Children's Hospital for like 35 years. Yeah, so that's
Cool.
actually my first volunteer job. I was a volunteer at Children's Hospital.
Oh,
So
very cool.
yeah,
Nice. That's so
but
cool that you have that bond with your daughter, and it's interesting how each kid ends up with their own personality. And I can only hope that one of my children ends up with the same interests as me. And yeah, I heard you say something about Cymbidiums. I love orchids. That's where like I first started growing plants. I really like Vandas, and yeah, I collected orchids a lot. I used to go to orchid shows when I was younger, and my grandmother really loves orchids as well. She's unfortunately getting a little old now, so she's not able to care for her plants as much. I went over there to visit her recently, and like during the pandemic, she like wasn't going out much, and I would say the majority, like 90% of her plants are all dead. So I was super bummed on that. But we got her some plumerias, like some low maintenance plants, and give her a watering can so she can continue with her, still do it a little bit. She's like 90 years old almost now. Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
wow. I mean, that's nice too because I think like anything, it's just like watching things grow, and when the plants die, they do bum you out. But then there's always a chance for regrowth and re-nurturing and bringing things back to life. You know, that's where I
Yes.
get one of my greatest satisfactions is if I do see a plant struggling, and I kind of do what I can to keep it going. And you know, plants die. You know, we can't be all 100% successful, but you know, we try to get a decent success rate and keep
Yes.
them growing. And hopefully we, you know, I could pass on some of these older cactuses to my kids, and they can take care of them.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. It's it's just a living sort of token of appreciation of life. So
Yes. Yeah, it's like a tangible, long-lasting thing that you truly can pass on from generation to generation.
mhm.
That would be awesome. Um, what kind of specimens do you have that you would like to do that with? And something also that I got some feedback. People were asking me for more specific plant information. For example, like a plant that you've struggled with. We'll get there. I'm just kind of going to lay it out for you, like
Sure.
plants that you've struggled to keep alive, more difficult ones. Plants that maybe you have more knowledge about, things like that. But yeah, let's just start with the specimens that you'd like to pass down.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I always like to recommend is, if you do buy a plant and you're interested in a plant, and do some research on it. Think about like your lifestyle. It's like buying a dog or a cat, right? Like,
Right.
you're not going to get a pet if you're not going to be home, right? If you
Yeah.
travel a lot, you're not going to get a dog. But yeah, just do due diligent research. And these aren't like handbags or sneakers. I think a lot of people get caught up in acquiring these things, and they forget that they're living beings, and they need to be taken care of. So
Yes.
one of the things I like to do is I have books, like so one of the type of um, cactuses I like to collect are terminating carpusses,
Very cool.
as well as uh, Ariocarpuses. So I have these books, and I use them. I've read them, and I go back to them for reference if there's something that I could, situation that I come up with that
Mm.
I can't figure out for myself, or I forgot what I read. But let me see. I have pulled a couple of plants from the greenhouse. So this is I don't know if you see that,
Yeah.
Cymbidiums lophophoroides. And so this is a small one, and he ended his bloom cycle.
Mm.
And they're pretty cool, just because turbidicarpuses are small, so you could actually, they're very compact, and they don't grow very quickly. And they stay relatively small, but they have like this little wool,
Yeah.
cactus wool to them that stays with them for a pretty long time. And so this guy
Similar
was
to the aerial carpets
correct. Yeah. Very, very similar to the
and
Aerocarpus.
Lophophora.
They're all from the same area, northern Mexico, the loafs. And I do have, let me show you this. This is an older Lophophoroides, this guy.
Wow. How old is that?
This guy is about 40 years old.
Wow.
He's a big guy, and he's in a Daniel pot, Cactus Cult Ceramics. Big call out to Daniel. He
All
makes the
right. I
best.
just got one the other day, actually.
Yeah,
Yes.
very cool
Beautiful.
Japanese firing. But yeah, that's what's in here. Yeah, his that's his other Instagram account is Cactus Cult Ceramics, and his other, I think his main account is people are saying Da Pottery, and he's like, no, it's DA. Daniel
DA pottery.
says that's his.
Oh, they're one and the same?
Yeah, they're
Slow
one.
down, slow down. I had no idea. I thought those were two different people, dude. Yeah, it
Uh,
makes sense because he was there when I checked out and I got the Cactus Cult Ceramics pot. But wow, okay. Shows what I know.
maybe it's a secret. Maybe he doesn't want people to know, so you could cut that part out.
You think so?
So this is Aztecium.
Mm. Hmm.
Right. So that's a pretty rare little cactus, and extremely painfully super slow growing, but they have beautiful pink flowers. And these are a little bit more tricky to grow, because you could definitely kill these guys by too
Mm.
much water. These guys need like little to no water. They grow on gypsum limestone cliffs,
Okay.
and just on the crooks of the cliffs, and they're just really interesting cactus that only grow in a very, very specific area of northern Mexico in
Uh,
Nuevo Leon. So
and
as
so how
well,
often are you watering those?
um, probably like every 4 to 6 weeks. It depends on the weather.
Wow.
If it's super hot like it was last summer, I'll probably water them once every 7 days, and
Okay.
at night do the cam system. But right now it's been kind of overcast, and it just started warming up today again, but it was like 70s in the 70s. So I just kind of keep them dry as possible. And these guys like all inorganic, you
Yeah.
mix. So I basically keep them in my mix of inorganic soil. And
And
here's
do you
another.
feed them?
I
Sorry.
do. I do. I fertilize them. I kind of do a slow fertilize. I'll use a 777 mix,
Okay.
but use like a quarter to a half strength on them
Uh-huh.
in the springtime, and just kind of slowly wean them until we get into the summer months like June, and then I'll start increasing the amount of fertilizer that I'm going to feed them, and then I'll taper that off when it just gets super extremely hot, like in August, end of July, August.
Mm,
And I'll pick it back up until everything starts going dormant. So
interesting.
yeah.
I'd like to give you some words of encouragement. I think you're the perfect guest to explore this more plant specific thing. So I'm very grateful that I'm talking to you right now. Thank you.
Oh, cool. I'm glad I
Yes.
could help. And I'm glad I could help other people, just learn about it. So it's fun and interesting. And I think people, if they get into it, they should learn how to, take the best care of the plants they can. So
You're absolutely right.
this is another guy that's lives in the same area as the Aztecium. These are Geohintonia mexicanas.
Okay.
So I have this in just crumbled limestone that I just got a limestone rock and smashed it up. And then I have some gypsum, just top dressing, just to make it look kind of cool.
Very cool.
And looking in a kotoi pot. So that's a kotoi pot, one of the
Hell yeah.
small pots.
Shout out
So
to Kitoy.
yeah, yeah. And then my last one that I like to show is Areocarpus. This is a Hintonii.
Mm,
Um, so they have their little patterns, and when you see them in habitat, you almost you're stepping on them. You can't even see them because they're inside the soil and the substrate, completely almost buried. So it's not until like late fall that you start seeing their little pink or magenta flowers peek out
oh,
of the
wow.
sand. So that's where you find them.
Okay.
Yeah, in northern Mexico and southern Texas.
Very cool. And what
Yeah,
about watering requirements for the aerial carpets? I mean, do they vary depending on like,
it's interesting because people will ask me like, well, how much do you water and fertilize? And everybody has a different soil mix,
yeah,
and different areas that they have them in their house. Like if they have
sure.
it partially shaded, or if it's in full sun, or if they have a greenhouse. And there's a lot of microclimates. My climate
Yes,
here in LA is going to be totally different than your microclimate in Riverside County or
sure.
Fallbrook and Vista, where they grow most of these guys. So it's hard to tell, but I just kind of try to keep a schedule where I'll water every 10 days,
Mm,
10 to 14 days, depending on it depends on the plant. Definitely like the Azteciums and the Aerocarpuses, I'll water those a lot less than I will with my Codex plants that are fully leafing.
mm,
So, but yeah, I just kind of gauge it, and you just read it and take a look at your plant. And if it's not looking so good, maybe pop it out of the planter and feel the roots and see what the roots are doing. And if there's you know mealy bugs, or if you have fungus growing, then you have treat them accordingly. Almost the plant will tell you when it's it's not doing too good. It's not going to look so healthy. So, but yeah, it's always good to just like, figure it out and try different things. And if you do it long enough, have enough mileage and experience with a certain plant, then you'll be able to tell,
Yes.
just by sight.
Yes.
There's different monitors, like there's water meters,
Hmm.
tell you what your pH balance is. They also have soil meters that will tell you what your soil pH is. So, you could certainly use those tools to help you figure out what your plant needs.
And what are your thoughts on soil pH? I'm not very familiar. I understand water pH,
Mhm.
but what is like a target soil pH that you'd be looking
Target
for?
soil pH probably between like 6.5, between 6 and 6.5. I
Okay,
don't
so similar to the water.
Similar to the water, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They have those inexpensive meters that are both a pH soil meter and a water meter. They have
Okay.
just the two prongs. You could just use those,
Okay.
give you an idea. And then they have more expensive ones made by Blue Lab that will give you accurate readings on both.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, you could get really esoteric with your tools, and get really into this hobby and start spending like silly money. Well, I
right.
mean, like if these plants are silly expensive, for what
Yes.
they are, and it's gotten crazy in the last, well, during pandemic, it got crazy and post
Uh-huh.
pandemic, but we'll see what happens like when life gets back to relatively normal stuff and when people find other ways to occupy their time,
Yeah.
they can venture outside their house now.
Yeah. So in comparison to when you started collecting, when exactly was that again? I might not have absorbed it. What?
Oh, like so I was collecting before the pandemic, but definitely during the pandemic, it
Okay.
just exploded. I think everybody was looking for something to do, but also uh, a sense of community. And I think
Yeah.
that's why the plant community, and especially here in Southern California, became really strong really quickly because I think everybody was looking for some way to socialize, and
Yes.
plants through Instagram was a great way. And then
Yes.
it just happened to be that nurseries were essential businesses and were not affected by the shutdown, and people felt safe going into the nurseries because it was outdoors.
Correct.
So, I mean, really during the pandemic, that was the first, we huddled down for like the first few months, and then I started going out of my head, bonkers, because in a way it replaced my street photography. Street
Mm.
photography was kind of my golf.
Okay.
And we live in an area in LA where we're close to the trains, the light rails, and I would always just walk a couple of blocks, get on the train, and be in downtown and doing photography and meeting up with friends and hitting a bar or restaurant later on. And so
Yeah.
that was sort of my weekends. That was sort of my golf. But during the quarantine, the shutdown, you weren't able to really do that. So it kind of became a replacement for, it filled that void for me.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It's
Yeah,
crazy how drastically our lives changed overnight, and we had no idea just how long it was going to last. And I
right.
think I think some people their lives might be changed permanently.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. There's some things changed for the better.
Sure.
Or, I think we have a better outlook in life of what is essential and what's important, and
Mm,
what certain people do for a living is more important than other things.
yeah.
And it made me take a look at what I was doing and my impact. When I'm at home, I realized, wow, I create a lot of mess and I create a lot of waste. And so I try to figure out like how can I lessen that impact of what I'm consuming? We're all just like primates. We're just like consumers, and we're
Yes.
just trained to consume and purchase and buy and collect and hoard. And
Mm,
you just start realizing when you are at home, and we're using our homes a lot harder than what when we did when we were working, you know in the office or whatever.
yes. Yeah.
You realize the impact you're placing on your own personal space by being
Right.
here all the time.
Right.
Yeah. So it's,
Creating more trash.
yeah, yeah. So, if it helps you and it makes you realize those aspects of your life, then it's great to acknowledge it, and admitting it and seeing where you can adjust from there. So
Well, there's a lot of wisdom in what you just said. And yeah, I found myself realizing the fragility of life and I became more involved in like my community and with my family, and it made me really value things and even such things as toilet paper, right?
yeah,
Like having toilet paper.
right, right.
Yeah, it was strange. It was really strange. So, when did you build that greenhouse? It was around the same time, no?
Well, I had the greenhouse. I started drawing up plans for it before it was probably during Christmas time before the
Okay.
pandemic.
Okay.
Just got a piece of graph paper and started designing ideas, and it was based upon the space that I was sort of allowed to put it in. My wife didn't want this greenhouse dominating the backyard.
Sure.
So there was a corner that a space that I wanted to put it in and just utilize the space. And it was just kind of a dead void in the very far back corner of the garden. And the only thing that was there was this giant nopalus that was just infested with cochineals. I don't know if you know the little
Sure.
white furry things,
Yeah.
beetles. And so I decided to put it there and just grab some graph paper, pencil, ruler, you know, protractor, and just started designing an overall idea. And I
Wow.
had some inspiration from some of the greenhouses that I would see on Instagram and on the internet. And so I kind of incorporated those ideas into the design. And I knew I didn't want a fully enclosed greenhouse just because how hot it gets here in Southern California. So it's kind of like I wanted to create like a hybrid greenhouse, shade house. And I think, yeah, that's right. As quarantine happened, and then we were starting to get some of those. Trying to think, the weather was really hot for like 1 week. It got like insanely hot here, like 110, 115 degrees.
Wow.
I was spending a lot of time moving my plants and shuffling them from one side to the next, depending where the sun was going. And a lot of my plants got scorched. And so that was sort of the catalyst for me to build a greenhouse and just get that thing going. Unfortunately, wood got really expensive. Well,
Sure.
it doubled at that time.
Oh,
In the beginning, it was like February where I started buying materials. It was like March. They started buying materials, but now I think it's like 4 times as expensive nowadays, just
wow.
because of it's just a shortage of materials.
An increase in people building things. Was that what happened? Because
Yeah,
everyone was home.
a lot of people started doing home construction,
Mm,
building fences.
yeah.
So redwood, which is what I made my greenhouse out of mostly, and PT, pressure treated wood, was relatively expensive and scarce. And you couldn't go to your super box store and find them because all was left was like toothpicks and shredded pieces of lumber. So you had to go to a real lumber yard and spend real dollars on real
Yeah.
expensive wood. So but I got it together and figured out what I wanted in terms of the design and the materials, and then figuring out the engineering part of it. And we we rehabilitated, or sorry, restored an old house, craftsman house here, where I live. It was built in 1905, so we have a lot of. This is like the third house that we kind of renovated. We like to buy old houses and fix them up, and I like
Very
the
cool.
character of them. So we have a lot. I had a lot of tools, a lot of sort of know-how. I'm not a builder by trade, but if it's a project that I want to put together, I'll figure it out. Um, yeah, it's just figuring it out is half the battle, and then just executing it.
Yeah. That was kind of my next question was this something you had experience in doing? It sounds like just like self-taught from home, from
Yeah,
restoring homes.
just restoring homes, home renovation, woodwork, sanding, getting your first nail gun, and figuring that out and how to use it and without killing yourself, and a skill saw and table saws and things like that. So I had all the equipment, and we bought our first house in Pasadena back in the late, like 97, I think, or 98. It was an old 1920s house that needed a lot of work. So first time home buyer, and no money because you're paying all your mortgage. You figure out how to do things yourself, and of course with every new project you need a new tool. So
Mm,
by the time I've restored and moved different cities, I think, how many houses moved about 4 or 5 times in the last like 10 years.
wow.
I should say that 20 years. um you just figure things out on your own,
Mm,
and and then also asking different tradesmen, like, how do you do certain things, and uh, getting tips on how to build things. And yeah, the trick is not to kill yourself doing it, which is like, I've gotten hurt with tools, and
yeah.
being super safe with tools, but yeah, you learn, and it's really satisfying doing things and building something, and say, stand back and go, yeah, kind of, that was on paper, and there it is in front of me, and now I'm using it and putting my plants in there, and they're thriving. And
Yeah.
everything, it's still a process. I still have to tweak it, or you figure out where certain plants do better because there's more
Mm,
sun on one corner.
mm,
Or like, I have these shelves that are basically built for me because I could reach, it's my main shelf is 36 inches, so it's high, so it's like counter height. And
mm,
then I have another shelf that's at 5 feet because that's just my eye level. So,
mm.
and I could reach over, and those are 2 feet wide shelves. And then I have a bottom shelf that's 12 inches off the ground for storage and my seedlings and stuff. That's
Cool.
need shade. So, certain parts of the greenhouse get hotter. I added an exhaust fan, and that's solar powered. And then I realized that wasn't enough when it gets super hot. Like,
Mm,
the greenhouse gets about 10 to 12 degrees hotter than the outside.
yeah.
So then I installed a fan on the inside to just get across
Okay.
uh, sort of circulation for the plants. And
Mm,
that's another thing, is like, plants do need airflow
yeah.
between. So we're trying to pack as many plants as we can together. Um, so you try not to restrict the airflow between them. It's just as important as soil and water.
Mm, mm. What didn't you just add a new shelf as well, like a couple days ago?
I did.
Where's that one now?
Right. It's it's on the south facing wall, and it's just a 6-inch shelf.
Mm,
My greenhouse is like 16 feet long, so
mm-hmm.
just adding just less than 10 extra square feet so I could put more plants. I need to, in a way, everyone's like, oh, you need a bigger greenhouse. Of course, I already have plans that I've drawn up for an annex. But in a way, I'm like, it's kind of good that it is this size, because I could really take my time, and I with each plant. And I think if I doubled the size or got a bigger greenhouse, I barely have enough time to take care of the plants that I have right
Yeah.
now, with everything else going on in my life. So it's a good balance, I think, the size that I have and the amount of plants. And I got to start purging some plants, but I did add that extra shelf just because it's utilizing that space to its
Yeah.
fullest. Yeah.
That's very cool, man. You're very multi-talented. Yeah, that makes me happy, man. I'm stoked on to hear about this. So what about the fans? When is your exhaust fan? Is it like a can fan, or what kind of fan is exhausting it?
It's just it's like an attic fan. It's like an
Okay.
exhaust fan. Just when it has its own thermometer, so when it reaches a certain temperature, it turns on.
Cool.
It's hooked up to a solar panel, and that's another thing. I didn't think I was going to need electricity, and I'm kind of glad I had a guy come in and run conduit
Mm,
uh, into it, because I'm actually in there at night more
right.
than I am during the day, just because I work all day, and then I'll just walk in there, flip on a light, and the lights that I have are grow lights,
Mm,
sensitive grow lights, so I could technically extend the day of daylight in there,
yeah.
especially during the winter months.
Yeah.
Even though it's not super close, I can't lower them closer to the plants, but at least it's something there, and I could spend some time at night, taking care of plants, pulling mealies, like
Cool.
everybody else does. So
And does that disturb them at all, having the light on past it, that what 18-hour mark or?
yeah, it's like, I think the time is the sun goes down around 7 o'clock nowadays. So
Mhm.
I'll just be in there for like half an hour to check the plants, or an hour.
Sure.
I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, but I think during the winter months, I think it helps them out if I just extend
Mm,
them a little bit longer. But there's no heat; it's just all light.
yeah.
So certain things kind of uh, shut down, at night on the plants. So
Yeah.
they're not close to the light at all, because
Okay.
my ceiling is, I think the ceiling's about, yeah, it's about 8 feet. Yeah, my 4x4s are about 8 feet. So before the acrylite, is it twin wall polycarbonate.
Mm, mm.
So
Or perhaps if there was a sun blackout for some reason, or multiple days where it was dark, you would be able to keep your plants alive.
oh yeah, there's on rainy days I could
Mm,
turn it on, and I also have a heater in there, so I could turn that on. That's on a thermostat.
very
So
cool.
I could just maintain it as much as I can. So uh, when it was overcast, I had the lights on. Was it last week or the week before? There was like 2 days of overcast, and I just had the light on. I
Mm.
don't know if it really made a difference, but I haven't had it long enough to really see the difference or know the difference. So
So do you have all or the majority of your plants in there?
the bigger plants started getting booted out
Yeah.
outside. They get kicked back outside to my. I have a bench that I had most of my plants on when they were outside. So
Hmm.
those things are coming back out as I'm filling it up with new stuff. So
Yeah. Are there
yeah,
any that can't live in there that you have outside already anyways?
agaves.
Okay.
Agaves pretty much do better in the ground. So I've been
Sure.
working on my backyard and doing a little aloe agave sort of forest in my backyard, and
Mm,
some pebbles, and doing that kind of landscape. So yeah, a lot of the agaves do much better grounded,
sure.
and yuccas do well.
I love you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the columnars, those are, when I'm running out of room, those are the next guys that come out, and I'll start sticking those in the ground as well.
Very cool. So do you have like a centralized focus in the greenhouse that you are you focusing on the aerial carpus, turbinal carpus?
That's pretty much my interest. Yeah, turbs and loafs
Mm,
and Ariocarpuses are kind of like what I really focus on, and I enjoy those, and they just sort of fit well with myself and my lifestyle, and they don't
yeah.
need too much care. I think the more you try to care for them, the worse they do.
Mm, mm,
You just kind of, not I don't. They're not fussy plants. They kind of take care of themselves.
yeah.
I like the look of them, just the symmetry and the shape. I'm all about aesthetics, and they're very appealing, and they got the funny little wool, so you get to pet them. They're like little
Yeah.
pets.
Or brush their hair like Jesse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Some people really, they look picture perfect. I kind of
Yeah.
like them a little, harder grown, and
Okay.
like they were in habitat. But yeah, it's just as much. Everyone has their own sort of aesthetic,
Yeah.
and but like I just like them. I don't mind having a little character to them for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And aesthetic is a good way to describe your collection, and at least the way that it's presented on social media, man. The night shots, especially, I very much enjoy those. Are you shooting those with a camera?
I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a couple of cameras that I use. I have a little Olympus OMD. It's like a micro four thirds
Very
uh,
cool.
with a 35 mil, but I could. It's a fast 35 mil. It goes down to 1.8 f-stop, so that gives you the nice shallow depth of field. And I also shoot. I mean, this is my street camera. I shoot Leica
Okay.
M10. So I use this with a 50 millimeter 1.4. Gets really technical, but
Yeah. I'm open to it.
it gives you the nice depth of field,
Yes.
which is, I don't know, it's cool.
Right.
It's a different look.
The smaller f-stops letting in more light.
Yeah,
Correct. Yeah.
shallower depth of field. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fascinated by photography, dude. I love like long exposures. That's one of my favorite things, is taking long exposures, even on a small f-stop, and when you can create like beams of light, almost like rays of light, when you take a photo of just a circular light, but you have a small f-stop on a long exposure, it creates those, I don't know what
yeah,
it's called, but
yeah.
yeah, and I love like moving lights, all those things. I love nighttime photography for
Some of
sure.
those guys are doing amazing time lapse photography with the flower blooms and some of
Oh
the
yeah.
grains. It's awesome. It's just another different type of photography. Everyone has their look, just depending on what their light setup is and what they like and what their settings are and what they take pictures of.
Yeah.
My approach with these cameras are going to be different than if I'm shooting a medium format
Hmm.
uh, film camera. This is Rolleiflex medium format.
120 or
Yeah, yeah, it's
cool.
120. So it's different. You change your approach based upon your equipment, and that's kind of like with everything. I think even with plants, you approach the care of plants based upon what you have, the space made available, all the tools that you have, and the knowledge that you accumulate. And the best way to learn about plants is, I found a wealth of information from some of the older
Yes.
growers and some of the older club members that just, they've been doing it for 40, 50 years. And they have a lot of great, interesting knowledge. But I also learn a lot from the younger guys, because they're experimental and
Sure.
try different things, and they'll just go head into it,
Right.
without
More
looking
willing to take risks.
risk and endless amounts of energy, which is awesome. And I think that's what this community needed, was the injection of uh, excitement.
Mm.
This just sort of, um, they're very jazzed into this sort of what was an older gentleman's kind of hobby. And it was
Could be perceived as bland.
yeah, bland and
Right.
boring botanist, horticulture. It wasn't terribly exciting, but now you get injecting a new spirit into the industry. And there's a lot of great fertilizers and amendments, and
Yeah.
coming from the pot industry. If you want anything to do anything, it's like, yeah, the drug companies will figure out a way, or the drug industry will find a way. It's to, you know hydroponics, all the
Yeah.
amendments that are coming out of there, and fertilizers, and the technology involved is mind-blowing. So there's still so much to learn about
Yeah.
how to grow these plants in particular. Or what I was listening to, is it Navarro, like just about edibles, like
Loved him.
how that is going to change,
Yes.
this technology, how it feeds the planet, which could
Yeah.
be super interesting to see. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's got a lot of energy too. I love it. It's great.
Man. Yeah. His beliefs, I love it too. Yeah, he brought a ton of energy, man.
Yeah.
I was really looking forward to that. Yeah, so arguably you're applying the same principles from your photography knowledge and maybe other skills of yours and kind of blending it together. You have like a balance of your interests and passions kind of, in a cyclical way, all
Yeah.
going around.
I like to think so. I'm a Libra, so it's all
Okay.
about balance. There's always good. There's always a yin yang. There's always good and bad, and you know, it's good to keep a balance of things because it keeps things in check. You know,
Yes. Yes. Cool. Um, okay. Sorry. I'm still nervous.
no worries, man. This is cool. It's fun. You
Yeah.
know, it's definitely not a topic I enjoy talking about myself. So I
Why?
like talking about other people.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah, because the spotlight is on.
Yeah, I've never been one of these. Love to be on center stage and
Extroverted.
I'm okay. I'm socialized, but it's just not one of those things where I need to be center of attention.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But more so, I think that you're providing a service to, especially to the newer generation of people like myself coming into this, and I very much respect that the knowledge that you have, and I appreciate you providing it, man,
Cool.
graciously at that.
Yeah, yeah. You're welcome, and thank you.
Yeah. Tell me about those books a little bit before we wrap up. We got like, 10 minutes. Um, I saw one of them said aerial carpets, etc. Uh-oh,
Yeah,
you froze for a
I
second.
think yeah, we just froze for a second.
You're okay, man.
Yeah, it's just these books that you could find. They're getting harder to find, but this will tell you all of the different varieties and sort of where they live, their habitat, their characteristics, their growth cycle. It doesn't, and talks about a little bit about hybridization of the two, but it doesn't really talk about like what's happening now with a lot of these Japanese hybrids, these crazy cool Aerocarpus hybrids that
Mm,
they're doing, these CVs that in greenhouse CVs and from Japan or Indonesia or things like that. But it's a good basic, book about the plants that live. We also talk a little bit about loafs.
okay.
So just northern Mexico, Mexican cacti
Yeah.
and Aerocarpuses. It's one of the more complete books.
Very
Uh,
cool.
yeah, but yeah, it's all about knowledge. I think just there's only so much you could find on the internet. There used to be a really good resource. I think it was called iLife, but it seems to have gone dormant or not accessible anymore.
Mm,
It had a lot of good information, but books do the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I see more and more of those Zoom conferences popping up too. And yeah, I've been really stoked on some of the YouTube premieres even of videos, but people sharing knowledge about these things. And it seems like the indoor thing is what, like you were saying, hydroponics is kind of changing the scene a little bit too,
Mhm.
with all
Definitely.
the indoor growing and the different things that you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, the clubs and the Zoom meetings are great. They have a lot of people with vast amounts of knowledge doing these presentations and showing. They do presentations of certain trips that they've taken to
Mm,
Mexico or South America, and Woody did a presentation for the LECSS club a few weeks ago, and that was super interesting. And he talked about um, just his experience with growing and the characteristics that he looks for in certain plants. So
mm.
there's a wealth of information out there. Just have to go dig for it a little bit. Not too
Yeah.
hard, but
I'll,
yeah.
I'll be honest. I wasn't all that drawn to like absorbing this kind of taking in this kind of information. I like plants, I like growing plants. I never was really technical with it. I did some technical growing with cannabis a little bit just because you have to, because it was indoors. But yeah, you've inspired me to want to take it a little more seriously. You and Katoy too as well. He got into some of that as well, you know, and I'm starting to see that there's a lot of these people out there that are truly teachers and with a wealth of knowledge, like you were saying. And it doesn't hurt to know it, at least, even if I'm not necessarily don't have the time to apply it or the the motivation to do so. I've just started to experiment with like even just pHing my water, you know. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling a little more driven towards it now. And I was going to ask you about quickly before we wrap up pH. When you're mixing nutrients in your water, your feed, are you pHing the water before you put the nutrients in or after?
I do it after.
Okay.
I know some people do it before, but I think it depends on the fertilizer that you're using. I think it can affect the reading,
Hmm.
and also, you're adding, if you're trying to lower the pH. A lot of people are using white vinegar, and then they'll pH it, and then they'll add their fertilizer. I tend to add my fertilizer and then pH it
Yeah.
and then apply it. Well, if it's like tap water that I'm using in my tank, I'll let that sit for a while and let the chlorine sort of escape the water, and for at least 3 to 5 days, and then I'll apply it. But yeah, I usually do my water meter, my reading, after I fertilize. But everybody has their own way,
Yeah.
and routine. People are stuck into their routine, and I say, if it works for you and you're happy with the results with your plant, then there's it's not wrong. It's
Yeah.
everyone has their own way of doing things for sure. And but yeah, it's just the way I do it and the
Yeah.
way I sort of was taught
Yeah.
the correct way to do it.
Yeah. Me too. Same.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you for that. Because it's been debated before in the cannabis culture as well. So I wasn't really sure what was the correct way to do it or whatever. But I appreciate that you don't just say, "Hey, look, there's a blanket approach, and this is how things should be done." You're open minded and you know
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm always open minded.
humble.
It's like there's certain things that I truly believed it was this way and the way I did it, and then somebody shows me, oh well, if you did it this way, check this out, and I'm like, wow, I never thought about that, and I'm going to try it. And then if you experience it and you have better luck with it, then you're like, well, that must be the way. Yeah, you'd have to be open to different ways. Everyone's got different ways, and some people have better ways about things. I'm not an expert at this. This is like my hobby.
Mm.
So I'm always willing to learn what other people are doing and apply it to sort of my own habits and my own routine and my plants. So
Now, when you said you were talking about dechlorinating your water, how are you doing that for the 5 day period
oh, you're just letting it sit,
in the sun?
letting it sit. I have it in my tank. I have a 25-gallon tank in my greenhouse, but then I also have a rain catcher
Mm.
that's connected to my drain pipes.
Mm.
But when I'm using tap water, yeah, I'm just letting the whatever they put in our city tap water just like escape by just letting it sit for a while before I apply it to my plants. I
That's
just leave it
interesting.
in the tank with the top open.
Okay. By letting it sit still, it dechlorinates.
Hmm.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, kind of like when you had fish, in your fish tank, you kind of let the tap water sit for a little
Oh
bit, but then,
yeah,
I
before you
think,
let the fish in.
yeah, and then you have like these dechlorinating little droplets. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the same idea, same concept, I think,
very cool.
because chlorine will just like kill your roots, immediately if you plot. Well, I take that back because I know a lot of growers that just use tap water,
The hose.
just a hose, and their
Right.
plants do well.
Yeah.
It all depends like what works for you and what you think is working. Some people have the attitude where, if it doesn't survive, it doesn't survive, and I
Sure.
just my way. And, that's not wrong. That's kind of a good way to thin the herd too. If you have too many plants or
Sure.
not, if it works for you, it's awesome. I'm not saying that that's a wrong approach, but it's your approach. It's somebody else's approach. So
Yeah. Well, Keto lets him sink down to the bottom of his little barrel. He
Yeah, I don't have time
lets
for
them
that.
sink down and sit down there for like, I think, a long time.
Yeah,
Like
he goes and he picks them off and drops it in his barrel, and one at a time put it back. I just,
completely submerges them.
yeah, yeah. In my mind, I'm just lazy by nature. I just can't do that.
I
Just
hear you.
where you're watering, you're just grabbing every single one. But it is nice to actually touch and feel, and just even bringing these little guys up from the greenhouse up to my office. It was cool. I holding it and looking at it and inspecting it.
Yeah.
There's something pleasurable about it, because we live in such a virtual life on our screens, our computers and our laptops and our iPhones and whatever. And it's nice to actually touch things, and
Yeah.
it's something tangible.
Yeah. For
Like
sure.
my life has been doing this, like Zoom meetings and virtual meetings, and I'm doing it again on my own time, but it's fun. It's cool.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, man, the social media thing, it's like, it's terrible for me. I feel like I'm wasting hours, and yet I'm so engulfed in it. And now I've like pretty much married it by just starting this project, and
Yeah, it's
it's
cool though. It's awesome.
very difficult though. It's hard to navigate because like I want to just experience life too, but I get caught up in it,
Oh,
I
for sure.
really do.
We all do.
Yeah.
And it's again, it's a balance, right? If you're able to do other things with your kids and your family, and in real life experience things, and then go into the social media world and do your own thing, like your podcast, and you get some sort of pleasure out of that, that's awesome. it's
Yeah.
all about it's all about making yourself happy.
Yeah. More than anything, I feel like I'm gaining an education, like you were the teacher today. Hi, puppy.
That's
And
Penny. That's my dog. She's demanding something right now. So
yeah, we're gonna wrap up. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the role of the teacher today. We're gonna spread this knowledge, and it's so cool because it ripples and it goes God knows where. I don't even know where half of these people are finding it. It's strange, but I very much appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. If everybody could please like, review, and subscribe to the podcast and hit that share button, I would very much appreciate that. Thank you so much.